is the theme to the show. This show is all about you. Not you, but you and your stories. Because everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. Everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. Brought to you by JeffSeltzer.com.
Hello and welcome to Everybody Has a Story with Jeff Seltzer. I am your host, Jeff Seltzer, and we have reached episode 47, which is pretty incredible. It's been almost a year. We started July of last year. We are at 47 episodes at this point, which for me is a pretty cool milestone because I am 47 years old. So now I have one episode for every year of my life. So hopefully we can make it to like episode 372, and maybe I'll live to the year 2345 or something, and somehow the math will math up. I don't know. We'll see. In any event, thanks again for joining. As always, really appreciate you joining me on this journey. A couple of things I'd like to chat about real quick before I bring in my awesome guest for this week, who I just met before we started recording. So first of all, I am currently at the end of a kitchen renovation. Not sure how many people out there have ever had their kitchen fully renovated, but it's definitely a bit stressful. So we've gone the last month without a kitchen. We've basically had all of our kitchen appliances throughout the house. So not only does it disrupt our kitchen and our eating, but everything else around the house. Fortunately, we have a great contractor who's worked out well. We got a pretty good price, but like completely redoing everything. And it's going to look awesome as soon as it's done. With that said, one thing I wanted to talk about was just the idea of like buying appliances or really anything in general at like Best Buy, Walmart, stuff like that. So a couple of things that I've noticed here that I've seen in previous, let's say, situations in my life. So number one, I think the biggest scam out there is service plans. So thinking about it, right? Anything electronic that you buy, whether it be cell phones, whether it be a freezer, as I just bought recently, or whatever else, they try to add a service plan onto it. This is one that I've always thought about, and obviously being very much into finance and into, the numbers of how it works, I've always wondered, I mean, these stores are generally playing into, the fact that you're buying something, you're spending a lot of money, and you're not really fully thinking about it sometimes. So think about it this way, right? So a freezer, right? So I bought a freezer for, let's say, about $600. When buying the freezer, they offered a service plan for like $150, which is insane, right? So paying 25% insurance basically for a 4-year plan for a freezer is unheard of. If your house is worth, let's say, $500,000, would you even consider spending 25% to pay for insurance for your house? Like, that's just unheard of. A $500,000 house would probably cost you an insurance, I don't know, maybe $1,000 a year. 2,000 tops, right? So you're talking like what's that, like I don't know, it's less than 1% or whatever it is. It's a super small number. So the fact that people will actually spend that kind of money on a service plan for me is ridiculous. Number one. Number two, thinking about it from the retailer's perspective, like I know enough about how retailers work in the fact that it's completely a cash grab for them. So when you pay the service plan money, they're just pocketing that. It's 100% margin for the most part, because when something does go wrong, what they end up doing is they either send it back to the manufacturer and they get a full refund and they just pocketed your service plan money. Or number two, something to think about as well. Oftentimes when manufacturers, let's say, ship or sell things to retailers, within their terms, they have a couple of percentage points in there for damages. So for the most part, they can just write it off as part of that 2 or 3% damage allowance they get. So for the most part, they're double dipping. They're making the 2% off of the original sale. Additionally, the $150 there. So that's just kind of nonsense. Additionally, here's the second scam that I've kind of realized in terms of this. So in the last year and a half, I've bought 2 different appliances from Best Buy. I bought a dryer and I bought a freezer. Coincidentally, both of them had the doors on the wrong side. So both of them, think about it, right? Like they probably come by default with the hinges, let's say, on the left and opens on the right. In both situations, I needed them to be reversed. So obviously to reverse them, Best Buy charges like $70 each to reverse them. I have a conspiracy theory of sorts that I think they do market research to understand where people want the hinges or which way they want it to open. And by design, they reverse it. So that way they can charge you $70 to adjust that. Because that's just basically free money for them. It's crazy. I don't know. Maybe it's N=1 here is what it is. But at the end of the day, I don't know. It's money that has to get spent for things. It's a lot of money. So the key is to think about what you're spending on. And hopefully you're not getting ripped off. With that said, I did want to remind everybody that this show can be found on Instagram at Everybody Has a Story Pod. My personal Instagram is at Seltzer77. You can find the show on YouTube at Everybody Has a Story Pod. For all things Jeff Seltzer, you can find all things at jeffseltzer.com. You can reach us the show directly via email at everybodysastorypod@gmail.com. As always, we're available on all podcast platforms. We are video on YouTube and Spotify. We are audio in those two locations and everywhere else. And lastly, just want to throw another plug out there for the new show t-shirts. So for those of you that are watching, I am wearing one of the new show t-shirts. Here's the side. Front side has the logo, back has the logo, as well as says the name of the show, Everybody's Story Pod. Everybody's Story with Jeff Seltzer. If you have our previous guest on the show, you can get that, say guest on it. $20, shoot me a note, and we will get it out to you. If you're local here in New Jersey, I can give it to you in person. If you're outside of my area, I can ship it to you, probably $7 or $8, and we will do that. So definitely reach out if you want that. With that said, I did want to introduce my guest for this week. I'd like to welcome Joey Knight Jr. Joey, how are you today?
Doing amazing, man. Been looking forward to doing this with you.
Awesome. Appreciate it. So real quick background on this. So Joey and I are both in a Facebook group, the Major Wrestling Figure Podcast. It's a podcast Patreon that has professional wrestlers Brian Myers, Matt Cardona, Mark Sterling, and they have a fantastic community that they utilize Facebook for. They have a great Facebook group with like 2,000 or 3,000 people in it. A lot of, let's say, like-minded individuals, a lot of collecting, but just a lot of just great people in general, kind of talking about life in general, about whatever else like that. So with that said, Joey, if you want to give a little background on who is Joey Knight Jr.?
Yeah, Joey Knight Jr., just a kid from small town East Texas who has had a variety of interests over the years, whether it be in theater, football, now has transitioned all of those talents into professional wrestling and trying to see how far we could take that. But outside professional wrestling, I do have my hobbies. I love music and going to concerts. I love collecting, whether it be Funko Pops or wrestling figures, obviously. I love physical media for DVDs, VHSs, so I've been collecting, going down that rabbit hole recently. And I love tattoos. I love expressing myself through art on my body.
Awesome. Cool. Well, first of all, Joey, thank you for joining. And secondly, thank you for obviously sharing, who you are. There's a lot to unpack there, and we'll get through most of it. But again, obviously, I want to give my my listeners a chance to understand who is Joey Knight Jr. So first of all, let's kind of like take a step back and think back to years ago. So you had mentioned in our previous conversations that obviously you were interested in becoming a professional wrestler, but then at some point you went to college and that kind of got put on hold. Can you kind of take me through that whole mindset? Like, how did that change? Maybe who pushed you in a certain direction, and kind of like, how did that look?
Yeah, so, growing up, I had one thing in mind. I wanted to be a professional wrestler, want to do professional wrestling. But then, as, you get older and everything, you start getting pushed into a direction like, hey, this professional wrestling thing, that may be just a hobby thing, but you need to focus on other potential avenues. So I ended up training for professional wrestling in my senior year of high school. But the school didn't last long. It only lasted a couple months because it was just me and one other person training. So the guys couldn't afford to keep it going. But I did keep in contact with a couple of the guys who would train me on the side when they could. But then I graduated high school, and there's a lot of push like, hey, get a college degree first, and then maybe follow suit into professional wrestling after. So I did. Went to college to be a teacher. I went and got my degree in history, and I graduated right before the mayhem of 2020. As we all know, we all experienced it. So everything in my area shut down in terms of both wrestling and then obviously the schools, and life kind of took its direction through various paths by that point. But I've found myself thankfully here recently in the past year because of great friends I have. We found another wrestling academy in the area, about 45-minute drive for me, and been the past year just putting in the work in that. And I'm here today. I've been having professional wrestling matches since August, held a couple championships, and we're going forward trying to expand out as far as much as I can.
Awesome. Sounds good. So first of all, thank you for sharing that. Questions that I did have. So obviously I've spoken with a lot of different people who have different influences of like who drives them left or right. So, senior year of high school, as you said, you were training to be a wrestler. You eventually went to college and you graduated college, which is great. A lot of people, get distracted or do something else. Life happens, totally get it. Um, was there a person or people, like, what were your parents' thoughts in terms of like, hey, Joey has to go to college or Joey has to find himself, or kind of like, what was like the mindset of people around you?
It was very much, hey, focus on college first, and be that, like, let that be the most important thing. Get that degree first, and then if the opportunity is still there after you graduate and all of that, just have the college degree as kind of like a safety blanket, more
Yeah.
or less, is
Absolutely.
what it was.
I mean, it makes total sense. And again, I obviously we're two different age groups at this point. I'm a parent. My daughters are in high school, so I think if one of them came to me and said, "Hey, I want to be a professional wrestler," I would say, "That's great. We're going to go to college. We're going to do our thing here. This way, you have some kind of a backup, right?" Because as we've seen, like in any kind of sport or any kind of profession where it's very physical, at any point, like that dream could just disappear for whatever reason, right? There could be injury, could be who knows what it is, right? Because if let's say God forbid something happens to you, now you've got to find yourself a day job, and without that degree, it gets that much tougher to be able to make any kind of money going forward, right?
Yeah, it definitely can. I've kind of veered off the path of what my degree was, over the years. When I was high school, I worked fast food.
Sure.
Then after college, I got into retail because, like I said, 2020 happened, so schools were not a thing that were open. And now I've kind of landed, in railroad is where I'm at right now.
Okay.
So kind of all over the map when it comes to jobs.
Got it. So what do you? So what is it that you do in railroad?
Basically just we're supplying plant is kind of where I'm at right now. So we kind of make sure that the railroads have their supplies is as much detail as I can get into it.
Okay, that's fair. Totally get
Yeah.
it. Understood. Much like I don't talk about my shoot job, I get you wouldn't want to get to too much detail because obviously this is a public forum, so that's helpful. Okay, so with that said, obviously you have a job, a day job. You also on the weekends and nights you do, I assume, train and also have professional wrestling matches. Um, to get into wrestling and to kind of find time for it, is your day job flexible enough that they understand what you do? Do you kind of do one around the other, or like how does that work from a scheduling perspective?
Oh, absolutely. This job is probably the most flexible I've had. I get there early in the morning. I'm off sometime in the afternoon, like early afternoon, and I'm completely free on Saturday and Sundays, which is key dates for professional wrestling
Of course.
bookings and everything else. So it is a very flexible job. Even though, like, it's one of those things where the balance is there to where the two don't interfere too much with each other,
Yep.
but both are very time consuming, and there's not a whole lot of time for anything else outside of that. But you try to fit other activities in where you can.
Makes total sense. So, as you said before, you've been wrestling pretty consistently since last August. And you, for the most part, wrestle most weekends because obviously you work during the week and then you wrestle on the weekends. How far from your home, I guess, would be the farthest you've gone to a show? Because obviously, over the years, I've read stories and seen documentaries about what the weekend warriors, like old school CM Punk would drive 14 hours to go from Chicago to Philly, then back to Chicago. Like, I know you said that you're generally located in Texas. Like, how far have you gone for a match? And like, is it mostly at this point like driving to matches, or you're getting flown out places, or kind of like what does that look like?
So not too much distance so far. So I recently graduated back in May from the company I was training with.
Awesome.
So now I'm allowed to go and wrestle for other places.
Okay.
Recently I wrestled for a place called League of Lions down in Marshall, Texas. So that was about a hour and 10-minute drive for me, and normally I do 45 to go to Prescott, Arkansas for Haybarn Championship Wrestling, which is my home promotion. So it wasn't too much further. I am in August going to start venturing on to Houston, Texas for Allied Championship Wrestling, ACW. So that's going to turn into about a 5.5 hour drive for me. So that will now become the farthest drive I'll do. But I'm definitely looking, because one bucket list item I do have, both just as a person, but also with professional wrestling, is to go to all 50 states.
Okay.
So by virtue, I would also love to wrestle in all 50 states.
Of course.
So hopefully here soon we can start racking up more of those states on that bucket list.
Nice. I mean, it sounds like you're super early in the game. Sounds like you're doing all the right things. You trained, you graduated, and then with obviously the blessing of your trainer, now you're going out and trying to, expand your horizons. Obviously trying to get, your name out there. Podcasts like this are definitely ways to do it. Obviously, networking within the major wrestling group is probably helpful as well. Do you have any other like trainees or wrestlers that like live near you that you want to kind of like travel with, let's say? Because like again, get back to CM Punk, like years ago, it was like him, Ace Steel, Colt Cabana. They would all get in a car together and drive cross country. Like, is it Joey Knight flying solo, or do you have like a group of people around you that you guys would all get in the car and drive to?
Right now it's solo. I'm currently in a faction known as the Establishment. My fellow stablemates are Eclipse and Aaron Black. Eclipse was actually the first graduate
Okay.
of the HCW Training Academy. I'm the second, and we're kind of waiting for our fellow stablemates Aaron Black and Kip Havoc to graduate training as well. So that way we can all kind of start expanding out together, making as many towns together as we can. That's kind of where everything's at right now in terms of traveling out with partners. But yes, those guys are my riding buddies when it comes to heading to the shows once a month in Prescott, Arkansas. And hopefully here soon we can all four of us pack up and just see where the road takes us, where life takes us, what travels lay ahead.
Sounds fun. So again, training with the HCW, are there any notable names that I guess like our listeners or people would have known of that either trained there or have wrestled there or like knew your trainer, things like that?
Not particularly yet, because HCW is still a new company. This coming
Okay.
September, they're going to be celebrating their 3rd-year anniversary.
Gotcha.
And like I said, I'm only the second graduate of the school. We on occasion we do bring in names that people would recognize. Like last May, we brought not this past May, but last May we brought in James Storm
Oh,
for
cool.
a show. James Storm came down and wrestled for us, which was a cool experience for everyone involved.
Nice.
But yes, HCW is still a very new company, and we're trying to make a foothold for ourselves, not just in Arkansas, but the wider independent scene in general.
Nice. You got to start somewhere, right? At the end of the day, you said it's still a new company. They just started training people and such like that. Obviously, if you graduate, yourself included. So definitely the way to start it off. I know you mentioned James Storm. I'll tell you this. Earlier today, I did a quick Google and YouTube search for you to see if I can kind of check up on any of your matches. Initially, I was super excited when I saw a match that was Joey Knight Jr. versus the Sandman.
Yeah.
Until I watched about 30 seconds and I was like, wait, that's not the Sandman that I know. So it definitely caught me off guard. With that said, are there any notable names that you either have wrestled or you've been to seminars with that you've said, hey, I've learned a lot from that person, or I've had experience working or dealing with them?
As far as bigger names that people nationally would know,
Yes.
not yet.
Okay.
But there are a lot of people who in this area who have built a good foundation for the East Texas and Southwest Arkansas area for us to hopefully build upon. I mean, there are great guys down here like Keelix Sunrise and Chris Preston, Aaron Storm, Dak Xander, a lot of great guys who, if you ask, they'll put their knowledge on you and help you out as much as they can.
Awesome.
Because professional wrestling around here in my area, it's something that, outside of when WWE would come and visit a couple times a year,
Yeah,
it's something that really didn't exist.
sure.
So just within the past, I know League of Lions for the past 10 plus years has been trying to build something around here, and it's finally starting to pick up here within the past 2-3 years. So hopefully a lot of the names I just mentioned here soon will become more nationally recognized to people, because there is a lot of great talent around here. It's just talent that's popped up recently.
Of course, yeah, and people tend to forget, myself included, just how big Texas is. Texas is obviously what the biggest or the second biggest state. So just to say somebody wrestles in Houston or in Austin or Dallas, whatever, that could be a 5-hour drive from like one part of Texas to the other.
Mhm.
I'm also spoiled because living in New Jersey, we have so many independent wrestling shows. Plus, we have Newark, so we get the Prudential Center, we get WWE, we get other stuff too. GCW comes here all the time, so I get more than my fill of professional wrestling here. Versus, to your point, some parts of the country, a little more rural, whatever else like that, you get less opportunity or less potential. So hopefully, professional wrestling continues to grow, and hopefully, to your point, your area at HCW, blows up, so people have another place to watch the craft.
Absolutely.
So I saw the match with you against the Sandman. I saw was on YouTube. Is that generally how your matches or HCW puts out their shows, or is there a streaming service, or how would people, if they wanted to watch HCW wrestling?
Yes, so HCW is primarily on YouTube as far as the shows and the matches. I record all of mine and my fellow establishment stablemates matches. I'll usually have them from my camera angle up the day after, whereas HCW, they'll have all their editing and multiple camera angles and everything. Usually, they've started getting the rhythm here recently of every Wednesday after our shows. So, like this upcoming show on July 12th, the Wednesday after July 12th is when the full show will be up, and then individual matches start going up on every Friday and Monday after that upload.
Gotcha. So now that you've wrestled the other Sandman on July 12th, you'll be wrestling the other Tommy Dreamer or the other Justin Credible, or do we go through? I mean, I think that's definitely an accomplishment if you can, right? Go through all of the in taking a step back. When I was at Calhoun's last year for the major live show, they brought in Jerry Lynn, former ECW, WCW, WWE wrestler, but there's also a bartender waiter there who looks just like Jerry Lynn. So they kept referring to him as NWO Jerry Lynn. It was very, very funny. I actually got myself a picture. It was Jerry Lynn, fake Jerry Lynn, and myself. Like, for me, I'm looking at it, and I'm like, when they're side by side, they're not really identical. But like when you look at them like out of context, it looks like Jerry Lynn. So I mean, my goal for you would be if you can find every non-ECW but ECW name guy, that would be quite the list that you can totally get like a whole storyline out of. I'm sure.
That would be hilarious. Or find guys who expand on the fake Razor, fake Diesel thing from back in the New Generation era.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's just one of those unfortunate things with how because you're only allowed 100 characters for YouTube titles.
Sure.
And so the Sandman Damian Gray, who was my last opponent, the guy that I took the hardcore title off of, he is the Sandman Damian Gray, but he primarily addresses himself as the Sandman. So that's why I just end up using that name for the title of the YouTube videos. Plus, I mean, it doesn't necessarily hurt the algorithm when you put the Sandman.
No, it doesn't.
There for pro wrestling. So,
like I said, like that's what got my attention. Like I looked through a list of your matches. That's what got my attention. I'm like, oh, the Sandman went to Texas, and I was like, oh, that's not the Sandman. But I mean, I'm sure this guy's great and up and comer or else like that. But obviously, for me, I grew up in Jersey. I used to go to Philly for ECW shows. So like for me, I am used to, let's say, the other Sandman. Although that other Sandman probably wouldn't be wrestling at the same level today as I've seen him recently or whatever. He's definitely his best wrestling days are probably behind him at this point. Cool. Yeah, cool. So how far out are you booked at this point? So you said July 12th. So are you generally, wrestling, same area? You've got a couple of things for the next few weeks. Are you booked like 6 months out? Like how far out from a scheduling perspective do you generally like go with that?
So up until here recently, it was always just one Saturday out of the month, every second Saturday for HCW in Prescott, Arkansas. But ever since I graduated, I've been trying to, I've been DMing, emailing all my stuff to various promotions, whether it be West Virginia, Oregon, Idaho, here in Texas where I live, just wherever I can. Some people have messaged back trying to work things out. The only one I've gotten to work things out with so far is Allied Championship Wrestling down in Houston, Texas. Hopefully here's that will be a consistent thing that I also start doing every month.
Yep.
But yeah, as of right now, I only have one weekend in July, which is July 12th to look forward to, and then I have August 23rd to look forward to for Houston, Texas.
Very cool. So it sounds like you are following your dream, right? Obviously, you've got to, you've got to work your day jobs that way you can afford everything, but at the same time, like your dream is professional wrestling. Like I would imagine, in a perfect world or what you want to go for, 5-10 years from now, you're on to bigger and better things. And like wrestling is your full-time gig, right? That is the goal, I would assume.
I mean, yeah, that is definitely a goal with it because it is one of those things where you have to find the perfect balance and the perfect sweet spot because it is one of those things where you do have a real life job and the real life job offers really good benefits, especially long term down the line.
Of course.
Whereas professional wrestling, yeah, you may get a nice, big, juicy contract, but that contract may only last 3-5 years, if that.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where if something like that was to ever come down the road, I would definitely have to think about it long and hard as, hey, if I sign my name to this paper, that's, ultimate checkmark, dream, bucket list item acquired.
Yep.
But is the risk reward ratio on it worth it?
Of
So
course.
as of right now, it is taking this one day at a time, one step at a time, seeing just how far we can take it and just see what new adventures may arise from it.
Let me ask you this. I mean, obviously, as you're going through some things that probably, let's say, other indie wrestlers and even higher have gone through previously. So, in our Major Wrestling Figure Podcast Facebook group, there are other indie wrestlers, and let's say higher names, right? Like Josh Breezy, I spoke with him back in January, had a great conversation. There are others, CPA, some that are in the group but don't really say anything, stuff like that. Have you privately reached out to any of them to kind of say like, "Hey, I'm looking for a mentor," or "Hey, I'm experiencing this. Can you kind of help me get through that?" Just curious, as like for me, I know working my real world job, anytime that I'm trying to experience something and I don't know what to do, I generally try to find somebody who's done it before or been there before to see how I can learn from them.
Honestly, no, not yet. Just from a pure simple fact of because I have listened to some of your episodes before, and you talk about being an introvert. Like I am very much one of those people where I don't like bothering people like that. So it is definitely one of those things where I just haven't built up say the courage
Sure,
to
sure.
maybe message some of these people and be like, hey, got any advice for me? But I do when I go to like meet and greets and things like that. Like I have, gone to meet and greets and seen Matt Cardona, Brian Myers, even people like Cody Rhodes and the Young Bucks when they were still doing Ring of Honor.
Nice.
Christopher Daniels, names like that. And I every time I go to a meet and greet and I meet a wrestler, I ask him like, "Hey, what's your advice? What is the one thing you would say to me to here's what would help make your professional wrestling journey easier."
Right.
And I always try to soak it in and apply it the best way I can for myself.
Gotcha. Makes total sense. And I'll say this on a side note. I mean, I try to help out whoever I can, either personally or professionally. If there's anybody, I mean, again, making the first introduction is always the toughest part. But if there's anybody that I've connected with that you're aware of that I can help you out with, just let me know. I'm obviously super happy to either set up the connection via Facebook or text or whatever. Just, let me know and I'm here to help.
Absolutely.
Cool. So, again, as you said before, you do wrestle as often as you can. What does Joey Knight Jr.'s merch look like, if at all? Like, have you gotten into any kind of like stickers or cards or t-shirts, or are you kind of too early for the merch game?
So I actually have come out with a couple of merch items. I don't have the shirts with me, but I have gotten into the bracelet game.
Okay.
So I don't know how good you can see it, but the
Yep. Nice.
establishment, my faction name,
Cool.
and then on the back, Joey Knight Jr. with a couple of diamonds because we
Awesome.
call ourselves the true diamonds in the rough. Um, I have had a couple of T-shirts. I actually just have a new design. I don't have it next to me. I probably should have thought about that beforehand. But shirts do okay. The bracelets do pretty well. My big seller is when I do bring out the 8x10s. The couple of times I have brought out the 8x10s, those have been the biggest sellers for me.
Nice.
But merch, I've done surprisingly well, all things considered. When you think about that, I've only wrestled for the past like 9, 10 months. A
Gotcha.
lot better than what I thought I'd be doing at this point.
That's good. So is it mostly or pretty much all sold via the table, or do you have any kind of online presence where if somebody's looking to buy something, they can get it from? Like, do you have I assume Pro Wrestling Tees is probably too early, but like What a Maneuver has something. There's like a Shopify, you can create your own store. Like, is there anything set up for you?
Right now, it's strictly table. Just because the first shirt design I had, I liked it, but it's also one of those things where it wasn't necessarily like I don't think that was something I could have like put on sale or online. But it still was a good design. Now my second design that I have,
Yep.
it is something that depending on how the sales at the first show here up on July 12th go,
Yep.
it may be something that I go, okay, I can maybe try put this online or maybe try put this in Facebook groups and see what kind of like online traction I get from that.
Gotcha. That's something I would say. And again, I know I dropped Josh Brucey's name before, but like he's probably, let's say, a few years ahead of you at this point, right? Like he started training before you did. He's definitely moved up a little bit more. He's had some opportunities and stuff like that. He's got a pretty good setup. I mean, he recently just put a micro brawler up for sale, so he probably has a
Yes.
little bit more of a presence. But I mean, he's probably, again, not to name drop, but somebody that you could probably learn a little bit from an overall merch game in terms of like where he's sourcing his stuff from. I mean, like I've even found like early in my podcast days, I was using I don't remember the website's name, but I had some t-shirts and sweatshirts created just for myself, and it was way expensive. It was like $100 for a hoodie, $50 for a t-shirt. And then more recently, I found other ways to just create stuff on my own. So like I mentioned earlier and a few weeks ago, my daughter bought a Cricut machine. So she's making t-shirts now. So I was able to find like cheaper and easier ways to do it. I don't know like what works for you, but I can almost guarantee you, Josh probably has some pretty good or probably more efficient ways to do stuff if you want to reach out to him.
Yeah, most definitely. Right now, I have a family friend who kind of like how you said, Cricut machine.
Yes.
She makes all of my t-shirts and everything. Like I said, just right, like I said before, right now with like I said, just how it is like very like relying on one person, Cricut machine, things like that. Probably not something I can rely on for like wholesale online
Of course.
merchandising. But who knows? Maybe somewhere down the line here in a few months, maybe next year, we grow the social media following a little bit all across the platforms, and maybe we're able to.
Nice. Do you have a Linktree or anything that kind of brings all of your different platforms together? I know for myself, like I have, like Linktree is free. You can get the professional one for like $80 a year. And then for me, I have jeffseltzer.com, which just kind of points to all my links and kind of random stuff. Like, do you have like a portal or like a homepage, or you just kind of have like a bunch of different social media presences?
So funny enough, you mentioned that. That is actually something that here the past couple of days I've thought about starting to work on.
Cool.
It was honestly probably going to be one of those things where after we got done with this interview, I was going to start on it.
Yeah.
But yes, sure enough, here soon enough, I will have a link tree that will connect all my various social medias, the multiple YouTube channels and Instagram and all that other stuff.
Yeah, I've had jeffseltzer.com for probably 25 years at this point. It's gone through lots of evolutions of what it looks like. But more recently, jeffseltzer.com points to my link tree, and I have all my links. I even have like, not even a link to my YouTube page, but like the specific videos. So this way I can kind of have on there and say like, hey, if I have 100 videos on YouTube, are there like 7 that I want people to focus on, right? So this way you can always kind of change the link every week or every month. When you have a new matchup, you can say, hey, here's my latest match. You can send people to making this up. JoeyKnight.com or whatever else like that. The top link there is always going to be your latest match, so people can easily follow you and know kind of where to see your latest and greatest.
Huh, pretty cool. All right.
Yeah, definitely check it out. Yeah, check it out. And like I said, don't be afraid to reach out to me offline after this if you want any tips or tricks on like what I've done or kind of like my thought process behind it. Because it's not necessarily perfect, but for me, it's good enough because I'm not trying to monetize it. It's just kind of like, my online presence, let's say.
Oh yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Cool. With that said, I did want to move on to, you mentioned earlier, you started working on a tattoo sleeve. So for me, tattoos have always kind of mesmerized me because for me, I don't know if I'm too much of a baby to get a tattoo or it's too permanent, right? So for me, going back years ago, so I graduated high school in 1995. So that's probably before your parents even met, I'm guessing. I'm not even sure.
Around that time. I was born in 97, so it would have been around that time.
Around that time. So I graduated high school in 95. I got my ear pierced, my left ear pierced in 1994. And even at the age of, I guess I was 16 at the time, I had the presence and thought that like, hey, when I get older, I don't know what I'm going to want. I don't know if I'm going to want to have an earring still or tattoos or whatever, but an earring felt like safe enough that I can rebel with it, but also safe enough that like, if I went to, a corporate job, I could easily take it out and, it's cool. Nobody would ever see it. And also keeping in mind too, like when I was growing up or even early in my corporate career, like tattoos were a little bit more of a faux pas. Like nowadays, I would say, sitting in 2025, there are people in my office who, I have a very corporate job, let's say. I work for a huge company, stuff like that. There are some visible tattoos, which if people had that like 20 plus years ago, like they would have gotten an interview. Like they wouldn't have gotten hired. But again, the culture, the trends in this country and the world as a whole have changed and they're a lot more accepted. So for me, like I said, the earring was probably enough. And even at this point in life, outside of getting, let's say, my wife's name or my kids' names or something like that, maybe even Mickey Mouse, I'm not really sure what else for me I would like. Because looking at it, and this is kind of how I overthink things. Like, what if years ago I was a huge O.J. Simpson football fan, right? And I get O.J. Simpson's like face tattooed on my arm, right? Now we're sitting here years later, and it's like, oh, or even more recently, like P. Diddy or something like that, right? You don't necessarily know how some of these things are going to age, and at that point, you're kind of like, okay, what do? You don't want to get it removed or covered up because it's expensive or it's painful. So again, this is just kind of the neurosis that is me in terms of like why I've never actually done it. So you, as you said before, have gotten a number of tattoos, and again, I love the visibility of tattoos. I love how they look, and I just love the creative process behind it. But can you take me through kind of like your thought process? Like, is it something that like you always wanted? You wake up one day and say, I want this. Like, where was your mind at when you kind of decided, you know what, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, so actually, crazy enough, no, tattoos were something that I never thought I'd get, to the relief of my mom, because my mom doesn't really care too much about tattoos, and yet here's the family, my dad has tattoos, my sister's starting to get tattoos, and I've been getting tattoos. So, but like I was actually the kid that was like deathly afraid of needles. Like I remember, getting the shots as a kid, and I distinctly remember being terrified of the experience. And here I am all these years later, have a half sleeve going on. Once the half sleeve's done, we're going to move on to a full sleeve. Um, the tattoos, they just kind of came up, as I got older a couple years ago. Just one of those things where I kind of like started getting more into the tattoo culture just through watching videos and watching like how WB does the highlights for their superstars and their tattoos, and
Yep.
how a lot of the wrestlers use telling tattoos to tell their own personal story.
Right.
Um, and that's kind of like how I've taken my half sleeve. My half sleeve is a very sentimental sleeve. Um, Tells a lot of different parts about me, like where I'm from, what type of lineage I come from. Like I have the Choctaw Nation symbol right here because I'm part Choctaw Native American.
Okay.
Just things that are important to me from the sentimental side. And then once this is done, we're gonna move on to the full sleeve, and it's gonna be more of like the nerdy sentimental stuff, get things like Pokeball or the sorcering hat from Harry Potter, and have all the colors of the different houses.
Very cool.
Bands, which you brought up earlier, like what if someone had a P Diddy face tattoo?
Right.
That hopefully nothing problematic ever comes out with any of the bands or singers that I love. I definitely won't venture into the face tattoo area.
Sure.
Like when it comes to music, it'll definitely be like album covers, like 3 Day Grace's 1X, or Linkin Park Hybrid Theory, things like
Nice.
that.
Very cool.
Where it's one of those things where even if someone from the band does become problematic, it's one of those things where, well, it's the album cover.
Of
The
course.
album
It's the
still
songs.
has its
Yes.
value.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes total sense. Is there anybody out in the wrestling game that you like, you look at their tattoos and you're like, those are great. Like for me, I would say, like, I love Dom Mysterio's lucha mask tattoos. I think they're on each of his fingers, which the level of detail is fantastic. I think Lita did the same thing years ago as well, where she had like lots of different like lucha masks. Obviously you growing up in wrestling in Texas, lucha is probably something, at least fairly big and probably fairly notable. So for me, I love that. Like, are there any wrestlers that you look at it and say, like, I think the tattoo takes them from like here to like the next level, and you just kind of love the persona aspect that it adds?
Yeah, so growing up, and you mentioned Lucha and you mentioned Dominic Mysterio. Rey Mysterio was obviously, like, when it comes to tattoos,
Yep.
one of the most, big name tattoo wrestlers out there when I was growing up. And for me, also, people like Randy Orton and Batista, I always thought they had really cool tattoos. They just kind of popped, made them look larger than life, look like superstars. And kind of in that modern era now, well, kind of also in my younger years as well, CM Punk,
Yep.
then and now, as he's gotten more tattoos over the years, he just, as random as a lot of them may be to us, and even to him probably, like they just always look so good. Like you said, Dominic Mysterio, he's another one that has amazing tattoos. Rhea Ripley,
Yes.
Damian Priest. Man, there's just a lot. There's just a lot of wrestlers now that have tattoos because, like you said, the culture around that has changed over the
Absolutely.
past decade or two. Like even someone like Carmelo Hayes, he has, he doesn't have many, but he still, the tattoos he does have are pretty cool. So there's just a lot of wrestlers now, both in WB and on the Indies, TNA, AEW. Recently from AEW back to WB,
Yep.
Aleister Black, Malachi
Yes.
Black,
Covered in them. Yes.
amazing tattoo
Right.
work he
Yes.
has. So it's one of those things. Like I love tattoos; they're definitely attention grabber, and they, as your podcast does, they tell a story.
Absolutely. And like what always blows me away too is like Randy Orton, obviously his tattoos have been kind of like his branding or his insignia over the years. And just reading and hearing stories about how like, obviously, as your body changes and things happen, like and tattoos kind of fade. Like Randy Orton, I believe like clockwork, every 2 years gets them refilled in. Because he's had, a lot of the same tattoos for the last 20 plus years at this point. So I've read lots of stories about how he has to go back, get them recolored, get them re-outlined, stuff like that. So that always intrigues me. That it's like not like a one and done. Like some of them are literally like a lifetime investment. Otherwise, they don't look the way you intend them to eventually. You know.
Yeah, most definitely. That is definitely going to be something I invest in and start doing. Like with the half sleeve, once I get the half sleeve done and it's a couple years removed, I'll probably be going through the same process of like every 2 to 3 years,
Yep.
go in and get various spots reshaded that are starting to look a little dull. May not be the whole arm, but try. My tattoo artist, she's amazing. She's definitely one that I'm keeping. She's gonna do all my tattoos. But yeah, that's definitely a process that I'm probably going to see myself going through here in the next 5 or so years, just redone like clockwork.
Do you so to your point, you generally use the same tattoo artist every time? Like she's your girl, basically.
Yeah, I've gone to her for all 10. Yeah, I'm at 10. All 10
Yeah.
tattoos I've done. Gonna go to her to get the Choctaw one touched up
Okay.
here soon. She's gonna be the one that does all my filler to finish out the half sleeve, and I intend on her being the one that does my entire full sleeve of nerdy stuff when
Nice,
we get to
nice.
that point.
How did you find her? So, like I said before, like I would be so in my own head trying to make sure I get it perfect because this is your body of work. This is what you're putting out there. Like, did you research multiple places? Did you get word of mouth for this one? She seemed good. Like, how did you kind of decide she was the one?
Yeah, so I asked around to a lot of friends that I have who have tattoos. I asked them where they got them done, who they got them done by, and one of my coworkers from my retail job, Walmart. Um, I love his tattoos. He has amazing tattoos. He went to this place in Texarkana called Black Pines Gallery, and now the artist he went to that he goes to, she specialized in like big pieces, like very detailed pieces. Um, she wasn't like much of a small piece tattoo artist, which is kind of like primarily what I'm getting. I'm getting like what they call patchwork done, just small pieces here and there. Um, but uh, his tattoo artist was able to refer me to the tattoo artist I have,
Nice.
and point her out and be like, but hey, she can do big detail pieces like I do, but she also, focuses on the patchwork
Awesome.
ideas. So that's kind of how I landed on her.
Very cool. Very cool. Awesome. So it sounds like you do have a bit of a path ahead of you in terms of what you want to do for your tattoos. Sounds like you do have a plan, which is great to hear. Because I mean, obviously, some people go out and just get a random tattoo here and there, and it kind of looks like a weird puzzle. But it sounds like you've got a plan in place for your sleeve and kind of like the long term of what you want to do, and then also the upkeep and taking care of them. Which we only have one body, so you want to make the most of it, and especially as a wrestler, you want to make sure like that is your that's your presence, right? If people see what they used to refer to as prison tattoos. It looks kind of
Yeah.
silly and it's kind of becomes your persona. So it's good to see that you have the mindset and you kind of know where you want to go. So that's great.
Yeah, because you definitely don't want to fall in the trap of like you could be someone who's like 6'6" and just absolutely jacked. You look like $1 million. But if you have a very like lazy done tattoo,
Yeah.
like you said, prison style tattoo, it just takes a lot of it away
It,
very
it,
easily.
it does. I'll say, and again, obviously, I would never say this person's face, and this is just kind of like the mindset I had years ago. But when Brock Lesnar came back or went to Japan or something and got that huge chest tattoo, the amount of comments and stories online were like, "What is this guy doing?" Like, he already had a ridiculous presence. He had his huge back tattoo. He had his shoulder tattoos, and then he had this huge, let's say, phallic-looking tattoo on his chest. And people were like, "What is this guy doing?" Like, what? I mean, obviously, if you're Brock Lesnar, it doesn't matter because you're just a beast and it is what it is. But if let's say somebody else had come back with that kind of a tattoo, they might not have gotten the same acceptance as Brock had gotten at that point. So I don't know.
Yeah, Brock's definitely one of those few people on the planet that he could do anything. He
Like,
could get anything tattooed on him, and he'll be fine.
yeah, it's like the Mike Tyson face tattoo, right? Initially, it's like,
Yeah,
what did he do? But then it's like, well, it's Mike Tyson. Just give him a pass and let him do whatever he wants to.
absolutely.
Cool. So with that said, Joey, this has been a lot of fun. Really got to know you, got to kind of share your story with our audience. Is there anything else that you want to share or any socials or plugs or anything you want to promote before we call it a day?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to follow me and continue seeing my story, you can follow me on Instagram, Joey Knight Jr. Follow me on YouTube, Basically, all my platforms are Joey Knight Jr., X, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. I have recently opened up a second YouTube channel because, as I said earlier, I love music. I love going to concerts. And I'm currently trying to move all the concert content that I have on my main YouTube channel to a new YouTube channel called JKJ Concerts. So that way it separates the two worlds. So that way, nothing's getting mixed up and the algorithms on my channel aren't being thrown off. I finally just decided to start doing that. I probably should have done that a long time ago. But yeah, 2 YouTube channels now, JKJ Concerts and then Joey Knight Jr. Joey Knight Jr. on all the other platforms, Instagram, X, and Facebook. Follow Haybarn Championship Wrestling on YouTube and Facebook as well. If you're in the Prescott, Arkansas area on July 12th, come check us out. We're doing a show where if you bring school supplies, you get them for free.
Very cool.
Trying to help out the local community. And then also, if you're in the Houston, Texas area on August 23rd, come check me out at Allied Championship Wrestling at the Houston Premier Arena.
Very cool. So again, thank you for sharing. And actually, before I move on to real quick, funny story here is mentioning your 2 separate YouTube channels makes total sense, right? Because at the end of the day, you're a wrestler, but you're also a guy, and you want to kind of keep them separate. Like, so a buddy of mine, Joey Silver, a wrestler for House of Glory Wrestling, I had him on the show back in like October, November or so. He has one YouTube channel. The weird thing is it predates his wrestling, goes years and years ago. So much so that I think if you go back deep enough, you see his bar mitzvah videos on there, which I'm not sure that's really his wrestling persona or wrestling story, which is funny that, when he eventually transitioned to professional wrestling, he didn't kind of like separate or kind of edit the content he had there. It's just kind of like one ongoing, like this is Joey. So definitely a smart thing to do to kind of, focus on your wrestling thing and then have a separate one for any of your other niche hobbies or whatever else like that,
Yeah, absolutely. The main Joey Knight Jr. channel, it's going to be strictly wrestling, and then the vlogs I do around wrestling. Every now and then we'll get into some gaming live streams on that channel. But as far as the concerts go, it's strictly all going into one channel now.
Very cool. Very cool. So thank you again, Joey. With that said, everybody, as always, you can check us out on Instagram at Everybody Has a Story Pod. You can check out my personal Instagram at Seltzer77 for all things Jeff Seltzer. Check me out over at JeffSeltzer.com. If you want to reach out to the show via email, you can email the show at everybodyhasastorypod@gmail.com. If you do want a show t-shirt, once again, we do have t-shirts front and back printed. If you're a guest, we can have a special guest edition as well, $20. Shoot me a DM or shoot me an email, any of the socials or email I just reached out to and mentioned to you before. Besides that, as a reminder, tell everybody that we are on all podcast platforms, video on Spotify and YouTube, audio everywhere else. With that said, we do have a few more weeks coming up before I take off for the month of August. Next week will probably be a solo pod, followed by a special 1-year anniversary podcast, followed by another podcast, broadcast live from PWJ2. So last time I did PWJ back in January, I interviewed 17 different people, wrestlers, referees, fans, friends, everybody. Who knows how it'll go? I mean, the Wi-Fi is not great there, so we're going to hope for the best, see what happens. But either way, it was a lot of fun seeing behind the scenes. I know at the show, they're going to have a Paul London seminar. So I might be doing some podcasting during the Paul London seminar. So we'll see how that goes, or if they shut me out for that. Who knows? With that said, have an amazing week, everybody. I'll be back next week talking to myself.
Everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. Everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. Everybody has a story with Jeff